Following a ground support issue that delayed the Eris 1 launch window 24 hours from Thursday, an electrical fault triggered the payload fairing to deploy just 1 hour before Friday's effort. Now Gilmour Space are working the problem, having put their launch window on hold for now. Head of Mission Development at Gilmour, Matthew Congedi, is beaming in to take us on a deep dive of what happened on this episode of Talkin Science.
21 years online. From Star Trek to science and space. And we're not stopping. This is Talkin Science.
Matthew, thanks for taking some time to chat during this critical moment for the company. Let's start at the beginning. What happened Thursday?
Yeah, so Thursday has been, kind of the penultimate activity for us as we kind of progress through our test activities in the lead up to launch. We've been on a journey testing the rocket in bits and pieces. Essentially the end product is going to be that first test launch, and we were getting really, really close to that first test launch. And as you may have read in the media, we did suffer an unusual circumstance there, a bit of an anomaly where the nose cone did separate from the top of the rocket a little bit early.
And then, agonisingly, with an hour until the launch window opens on Friday, an electrical fault cracks open the payload fairing.
Yeah, correct. So it's a really interesting circumstance for us, and we did expect there would be some kind of teething issues as we did get towards those final moments of launch. As we're conducting more and more rigorous tests of the vehicle where we follow a principle called test as you fly. So that means testing the things in more and more of a flight representative scenario. So in this particular test, we were in, about 1 hour out from launch and in very close to a final ready for flight configuration. And it was in that configuration where we identified that where with everything finally tuned into that configuration, there was something that we needed to test, and lo and behold, we conducted the test and it didn't quite go as planned. So it's certainly great to grab it on the ground rather than when we're certainly committed to the launch and in the air.
Absolutely. And I think it's rocket science, it's hard, but the good thing here is that there was no damage to the rocket and no damage to that all-important payload, but most especially no injuries to people.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a really rigorous process by which we kind of conduct these test activities, and this extends all the way back down into our factory when we're doing things at a subcomponent and subsystem level. But certainly by the time we're at that point there, where, like you said, we're very close to our launch attempt, we're doing really rigorous assessments of how we conduct those tests safely. And that meant that at the time there was no fuel in the rocket and there was no people on site, which is really great. It means we can conduct some of these riskier tests in such a way that we're not going to put any people in harm's way, and we can get all the information that we need from these tests. It was unfortunate. Like you said, no, the rocket itself was undamaged, which is great because we can just send a replacement component up to the launch site and fit it again, and where it's not too much of a turnaround for us to be ready for launch again.
Now, Talkin Science has followed Eris' journey from its infancy as just an engine on a test bed. I've spoken with experts along the way, and Adam as well, who all tell me rocket science is hard. This just proves it, but it's by no means the end for you guys.
No, absolutely not. This is certainly part of the journey, and certainly, whilst we try and avoid anomalies and odd occurrences like this, we certainly expect that they will be, we will find them along the way, and it's all part of the process. Like I was saying before, we test everything down from the component level up to the system level. And as those tests kind of work up their way to the whole system, they kind of do begin to increase in complexity. There are more moving parts. There are more interfaces between components and subsystems. So they have, at this point in time where we are barreling towards our first launch, they have gotten very complex, and there's a lot of moving parts to make sure that everything is as it should be. But with every test that we conduct, we learn more about the platform, we learn more about the rocket, and we put ourselves in a better and better position to make this first test launch as successful as it can be. We are certainly getting closer and closer.
And of course, this all comes as well as Cyclone Alfred at the start of March, delayed as well. There's been a few delays in this one, but I think that's just making the public's and I guess staff's appetite for this launch even more hungry.
Yeah, absolutely. We've been really excited and pushing really hard for the last few months now. Cyclone Alfred was an interesting little setback, and we've been working with our regulators. Once we saw that setback, we wanted to work with our regulators to do what we can to improve the system, improve our assumptions, make things as safe as we possibly can. And we are certainly getting very close. Everyone in the organization is really, really excited. It's something that we've been preparing for many years now, 4 to 5 years worth of first development. And once it was developed, now we've been working towards, operationalizing the capability. So everyone is really, really excited and tired, but mostly excited to kind of get this launch underway and give this a red hot crack.
Now, I know that you're going to give me the PR answer, but I'm going to ask this question anyway. I know that in the beginning, the regulators were really tricky to deal with. It took taking a long time to get things sorted, to get clearances done. Has it been easier as we've been going and Gilmour have been proving themselves, basically?
Yeah, I mean, there is a big part of that. We are all as a country maturing when it comes to space activities. These are really, really complex activities, and they are quite risky activities as well. They do carry an element of risk. So Gilmour Space has been on a learning journey, and so too have our regulators. We work with them very closely to characterize the risks associated with activity and make sure that all the controls and safety areas that we have in place are going to protect people. So it has been a frustrating journey, and we certainly do expect that now we've gone through this for the first time, it will be much easier in the future. We'll have a common ground and a common platform to move off into the future and really optimize these processes. But at the end of the day, we're all doing this for the first time. We're all trying to characterize and manage this risk as best we can, and that's true on Gilmour Space's side, but also our regulators' side at the same time.
And it's not just like we're launching a satellite here. We're into low Earth orbit. We're aiming for that full-on orbital trajectory. That in itself brings a whole other list of challenges.
Absolutely. So, a lot of what we've done here in this country has been suborbital, which means it only travels, several hundred kilometers from its initial starting point. When we start talking about orbital trajectories and orbital rockets, it really is a total different ballgame now. We're talking about a launch vehicle which, once launched, is actually going to, touch the other side of the entire planet, which means we are, in essence, even if the risks are very low, infinitesimally low, we are exposing, risk to other entities and other countries and other parts of the globe, and that risk has to be managed. So it's a much more extensive process by which we go to work with those partners and work with those stakeholders to make sure they're made aware of those risks, and we're establishing controls in all of those regions to ensure that the launch is going to be safe. And that's not even speaking to the technical complexities of launching a rocket on that scale. An orbital rocket is noticeably larger than a suborbital sounding rocket. And so too is it more complex. You have multiple stages comprised of multiple subsystems, which all have to work together in a very, very specific way to realize that end goal of placing something into orbit.
Now, replacing fairings were trucked up over the weekend. I think that's incredible as well. I'm pretty sure I read that it was within 24 hours. The pair of fairings was on the flatbed and on the way up to Bowen. Very good to see that we're not trying to have an oversized load going on a Queensland highway after what happened with the wind turbine and the Warrego highway. So good to see that's up there, and the engineers are working to get that fitted and get everything underway again.
Yes, certainly. We certainly made sure, like, that was actually a big consideration for us when designing the rocket. We want to make sure that it's easily transportable up, and we didn't have to do any crazy considerations for getting it up there on the highway. So it was really great to see that it was up there within 24, I think it was 24, 36 hours. We actually had the payload fairing in Bowen ready to be fitted onto the rocket. We're really trying to minimize the amount of turnaround between one launch attempt to another. We also have some kind of some broader investigation to do to figure out how that actually happened in the first place. So we're not just going to strap the fairing straight back onto it and lo and behold, the same thing happens again. We want to understand why and mitigate against it, for when we go for our next attempt.
Awesome, Matthew. Now, the most important question I've got for you. How's the Vegemite? Is it chilled or is it back on the shelf in the staff kitchen?
We have a separate pool of Vegemite for staff as we're working through the launch countdown. Although I'm sure a couple of them would have been tempted to climb on top and make themselves some toast. So the Vegemite is safe and sound. We're getting ready to give another crack, and hopefully it'll be up in space before you know it.
Very, very cool. Now, I try and be serious, but of course the mainstream media have been focusing on that as well. So I wanted to hear from the horse's mouth exactly what's happened with that Vegemite. So, and also too, in all seriousness, I guess the weight of that probably has to stay the same for all the balance calculations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are using this as an opportunity to do something fun with a launch that we are, treating as a test. We're not really servicing commercial customers at this point in time, just because it is a test flight, but it's certainly something we're going to need to do in the future. And all of those calculations are certainly something that needs to get factored into our calculations and into our trajectory design, regardless of what the payload is. So Vegemite jar or incredibly complex satellite, the process should be relatively the same, so that we're rehearsing that, and that when we do come to service those customers with real satellites in the future, we're well prepared and we can just go through the motions and service that customer, really well.
Matthew, good luck. Hopefully we'll see Eris fly from Bowen real soon.
Fingers crossed. Thanks, Matt.
Daily science and space stories with an Aussie flair. Like, follow and subscribe for more. This is Trekzone's Talkin Science. We'll be up in Bowen for that next launch when it happens. Looking forward to all of that. Stick around on our socials and on the website for the very latest of Gilmour Space's Eris 1 launch campaign.